Matt Schaff and Jared Small of DraftSharks.com here to run you through the top waiver wire options heading into week 6 of the fantasy football season. And Jared, this one got a lot more interesting over the past few days because we've got some key injuries that are going to leave a lot more fantasy managers with holes to fill, looking for production as soon as week 6 and maybe beyond that. Let's start at wide receiver because Justin Jefferson, there can't be a bigger loss than the guy who was the number one pick in just about every draft. He's going to be out at least 4 weeks. He's expected to hit IR this week. So that means at least 4 games. And we'll see beyond that. It wasn't even like after 4 games, he'll be ready. It's like he's going to be out at least 4. And then we're going to see how his hamstring is healing. So it's clearly a pretty significant one. The first wide receiver we're going to talk about for anybody needing to replace him is Josh Downs from the Colts. What do you think of the rookie?
He's had wide receiver 32 and wide receiver 18 finishes among the last 3 weeks. The wide receiver 32 finish came in that Gardner Minshew start against the Ravens. And Downs has seen 24% of Gardner Minshew's passes across, Minshew's 3 appearances, basically 1 full game, about half of 2 other games. So strong target share for Josh Downs, who has, pretty clearly emerged as the number 2 wide receiver in that passing game. The Colts remain a fast-paced offense. They are still first in neutral pace. And I do think we're going to see them pass a bit more with Minshew under center. I think Minshew at this point in their careers is better for these Colts pass catchers than Richardson would be. So Downs is looking like someone you can use as a wide receiver 3 going forward at this point, I think.
Downs, interestingly, has a shorter average target depth than Michael Pittman, but is ahead of Pittman in both yards before catch and yards after catch per reception. So he's been efficient in what he's gotten so far. 19.8% target share, 21.5% of the team's receptions, 22.6% of the team's receiving yards. So good shares through the first 5 games. I agree, should be fairly heavily involved. Certainly not a must start, but somebody who could be a wide receiver 4 going forward, could commonly sneak into wide receiver 3 territory. So helpful range, not savior range by any means. In Minnesota, the injury to Justin Jefferson shuffles everything. Like, I'm wondering if they're actually going to end up throwing the ball less. I would think that they would cut it down at least a little bit when you lose arguably the best wide receiver in the league. But at the very least, we know lots of targets are available, and KJ Osborn's probably set to benefit as much as anyone. Like, if anybody's watching this is like, what about Jordan Addison? Shouldn't I pick him up? Yeah, if he's available in your league, yes, you should pick him up. And you should also tell your commissioner to get rid of positional limits and let everybody have more than 4 wide receivers at a time. But Jared, KJ Osborn's available in a lot more fantasy leagues this week. So what's the outlook for him?
I think you're right. There's going to be wide range impacts to this Vikings offense without Justin Jefferson. The Vikings are first in pass attempts, first in pass rate, and first in neutral pass rate through the first 5 weeks of the season. So yeah, they're going to pass less. I still don't think it's going to be a huge shift because the running game is bad. And even without Justin Jefferson, I think the strength of that offense is Addison and TJ Hawkinson. I'm not going to call KJ Osborn a strength of anything. He has been really bad this season. 0.82 yards per route run. That's 64th among 66 qualifiers. He's 65th among those 66 wide receivers in Pro Football Focus receiving grade. This basically reminds me of Josh Palmer. I think Osborn's a worse player than Josh Palmer. I think he has more target share upside because there's no Keenan Allen in Minnesota. I'm not super excited about Osborn. I do think he's going to be a guy who's probably going to get 6 to 8 targets per week by default, as long as Jefferson's out. So, that he's useful to some extent, but I think Addison and Hawkinson are going to be, the big winners from Jefferson's absence.
Osborn, 5 catches, 9 targets, 49 yards in that game that Jefferson left early. All 3 of those are highs for the season, which shows you the volume upside that's there. And it also shows you the limited yardage you should expect from him. So similar category to Josh Downs in that he's going to be, he's potentially helpful. He's not going to win you anything in particular. And there's less explosiveness to KJ Osborn than there is to Josh Downs. Final receiver we're going to talk about is Michael Gallup, unaffected obviously by the Justin Jefferson thing, but he's been doing pretty well on targets lately. He actually has seen as many targets as CeeDee Lamb over the past 3 weeks, which I think says more about the Cowboys' failures in getting the ball to their best wide receiver over that span than it does Gallup, but it at least means that Gallup is outperforming Brandon Cooks in usage lately. He has been a fringe wide receiver 3 in PPR scoring over that span with no touchdowns. So at the very least, I think Michael Gallup could help you this week against the Chargers.
Yeah, agreed there. I think Gallup has definitely become the better fantasy option than Brandon Cooks, who, man, I hate to say it because I've loved Cooks since he's come in the league. I think he's just about done at this point. He's just been awful so far this season. He has an even lower yards per route run than KJ Osborn does. So I think Gallup's going to be Dallas's number 2 wide receiver the rest of the way. I have some concerns with that offense. It's been disappointing. The Cowboys in general remain a tough offense to project because they have played like one normal game so far. That Cardinals game was like kind of normal, right? But every other game the Cowboys have played, they've either gotten crushed or crushed the opponent and really ended up like pulling starters late in the game. So the scheduling does look pretty solid going forward, starting with this week's game against the Chargers. So I do think, again, Gallup, he's been around 18% of the targets over the last 3 weeks. That's kind of what he's been throughout his career, which, is enough to make him like, a fringy wide receiver 3 or a pretty solid wide receiver 4.
And that shows you how wacky their season's been so far when their most normal game is when they got beat by Josh Dobbs. Let's switch to running back now, where people who have been enjoying Devon Achane through the first, 3 weeks of his relevance, now we're going to lose him for multiple games. We don't know as we're speaking if he's going to land on IR, but they're at least considering that. So that says at least probably 3 games for the rookie. Fortunately, we might be able to find help in that very backfield. And it's somebody that we loved in the summer until he landed on IR heading into the season. Jeff Wilson Jr., we're waiting to see if he's going to practice this week. It seems like it's at least close, if not imminent, though.
His agent seems to think he's ready to go. Miami has been, a bit less committed to Wilson being ready. Adam Schefter did say this morning that Wilson's going to be activated and he's at least going to practice this week. We'll see if he's ready to play, but we've said multiple times on this show that Wilson is someone who should have remained stashed, and this is exactly why. If either Achane or Mostert went down, Wilson was going to be exciting because of this offense. So we'll see. He's definitely worth stashing. I think he's the top waiver wire add this week. I still think Salvon Ahmed is worth adding to in most fantasy leagues just because we don't know about Wilson. We don't know how long Achane's going to be out. Raheem Mostert is 31 years old and has only twice played more than 11 games in a season. So, again, just any piece of this Dolphins offense I think is worth stashing.
Yeah, I won't argue with grabbing Salvon Ahmed if you have a spot and you need some running back help to stash. I would not take him this week over Emari Demercado, and that's the pronunciation according to the Pro Football Reference key. So I'm going to go with that. He looks like lead is a strong word. He looks like the best bet for the most touches in the Arizona backfield heading into week 6. He ran for 45 yards and a touchdown on 10 carries in last week's game that James Conner left with a knee injury. We've now learned that James Conner is going to miss multiple games. He's a candidate for IR, so probably at least 3, probably looking at 4 there. We did not have Keontae Ingram either of the past 2 weeks, dealing with a neck injury, so we're going to see if he's ready for week 6. The Cardinals did claim Tony Jones Jr. off of waivers from the Saints to be another body at the position, but there's at least some speed to like here, Jared. 215 pounds, 4.49 40, so that gives him an 83rd percentile speed score in Demercado. What do you think?
Yeah, that the size speed combo is one thing to like. Demercado is probably a jag. I mean, he's probably nothing special, right? I mean, he spent 5 years at TCU and never came close to breaking out. But like you said, he has enough size. He has nice speed. The other positives to me, we've talked about this. Arizona offense is not a disaster. It's actually been, serviceable so far. Their run game, Arizona is 6th in rush offense DVOA through 5 weeks. They're 14th in adjusted line yards. So, the running game has been a good spot, for fantasy production in this offense. And then the other thing with Demercado, he had already been playing on passing downs. I think we talked about that on a recent show, that he'd been stealing some passing down snaps from James Conner. So, he has 4 catches on 7 targets over the last 2 games, with Conner playing, 1.5 of those games. So I think if nothing else, Demercado is going to be the pass catching guy in this backfield, and that makes him the best bet. He's sitting in running back 3 territory in our initial week 6 rankings. And that's assuming Keontae Ingram is going to be back for this one, which, we obviously don't know. So, Demercado could even, jump, into the top 25 if Ingram ends up sitting. So again, that's kind of where we're at running back right now. Demercado is going to be a starter, I think, in most fantasy leagues this week.
Yeah, and if you look at our adjusted fantasy points allowed, it looks like the Rams are a bad scoring matchup for running backs, 2nd worst on this week's slate, but they're 26th in overall defensive DVOA. They're 22nd in run defense DVOA. So I think that's probably just more bad luck for their opponents or their opponents happening to score points in different ways. I don't think it's actually a negative matchup. So I would say at the very least, Demercado makes sense as a week 6 fill-in if you're suddenly in need, either because of bye weeks or injury or whatever. He's worth a look at least this week. And then I guess we'll see how this week goes and kind of project him beyond that.
Tony Jones is, I think he's one of the worst running backs in the NFL, honestly. And then Keontae Ingram has shown absolutely nothing over his short career so far. So plenty of opportunity for Demercado, even if he's just okay, to kind of claim a pretty big share of the backfield.
Yeah, he did have 40 receptions in college, did not have anything special production-wise. You would like to say, yeah, but he had to play with Zach Evans and played with Kendre Miller at TCU. If you don't emerge ahead of those guys in college, then the chances of you being special in the NFL are not very good either. So, we'll see what he's got. Let's close this out with a streaming defense, Jared. And I think it's not a very good week to look for streaming defenses. If anything, the options this week are a vote in favor of trying to look further ahead than 1 week and trying to lock down your option before you're fighting everybody for that defense on waivers. Like if you got Detroit ahead of last week, you're in good shape. But if you are looking for one this week, who would you recommend?
I was checking this morning. Kansas City is still available in about half of sleeper leagues, and that's just an improved defense. They're up to 11th in defensive DVOA, and they are 10.5 point home favorites against Russell Wilson and the Broncos, who are again on the road on a short week on Thursday night. So I think Kansas City is the best bet if they're available. Outside of that, you're starting mediocre to bad defenses in good matchups. I think Atlanta gets Washington. Washington is dead last in adjusted fantasy points allowed to defenses. They're providing a 178% boost to defensive scoring so far. Even the Bears racked up 5 sacks against Washington last Thursday night. So I think Atlanta is okay. And then next option for me would be Miami, who is not a good defense, but they get Carolina, who is 26th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to defenses. Panthers have a 17.5 point implied total. That's third lowest on the week.
I'm more wary of Atlanta against Washington because I think Washington's more capable of scoring points than Carolina is, but there's certainly upside to both of those. I like Jacksonville this week. I know that there's some downside risk to playing against the Colts right now, but we already had a positive team defense week from these Jaguars against the Colts. They allowed 15 points to them in the opener, sacked them 4 times, grabbed 3 takeaways. 4 of 5 Jaguars opponents have been held to 20 points or less. Of course, most recently the Bills this past Sunday, and the Bills spent most of that game below 20 points. So it's been a decently good defense so far, and there's upside to the matchup with the Colts this week.
For sure.
You can check our updated week 6 rankings at defense and all the other positions to see who makes sense for your particular team this week. Our week 6 waiver wire pickups are live on draftsharks.com to help guide you with picks, drop candidates, and to grab this guy across league formats. And of course, the free agent finder is going to be your top tool for finding exactly what's available in your league, exactly what makes sense for you, and exactly who you should drop from your current roster to pick that up. So use your free agent finder. If you haven't become a DS Insider yet, become one today so you can take advantage of it and win this week and win this season.